Good evening. Welcome to the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting. Today is Wednesday, January 15th. It's 5:30. I'd like to call the meeting to order and begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is delegations, in case anyone from the public wanted to address us on items on the agenda. Seeing that there's no one here from the public, we can move on to reports.
Approval of minutes.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry. Make a motion to approve the minutes for the December 9th, 2024 meeting.
Second. Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any comments or corrections? Paul, did you want to? You already corrected.
No, we already,
it.
that
Got
was corrected, yeah.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No. The motion carries 4-0-0. All set with delegations, so then can move on to reports from our first selectman, Mr. Dan Cunningham.
Thank you. This is, seems to be working. So good evening, everyone. If I haven't said it, Happy New Year. Good to be back. So I just want to, just sort of as an overarching statement, you know, we're very cognizant of the pressure to try to have a constrained budget this year, and we're working very hard to make that happen. Hopefully, we'll get to where we need to be. There are some goals, though, and some things that I do want to make the board aware of. You know, we've made a lot of changes and I think improvements with the East Lyme Fire Service, and many things have started to come together. This is probably the year to try, if we can, within our budget constraints, to expand the service. You know, we learned a tough lesson last fall with all of the brush fires, that how important it is to have adequate staffing. You know, they were able to keep pace with it, but they were really taxed and overworked, and we got a lot of help from other communities. And now, of course, everybody, you know, we're all thinking about Los Angeles and what's going on, but it's very important to have adequate staffing, and we're going to try to improve that. We think going to the 24/48 schedule provided rounded out coverage, you know, 24 hours a day, but we'd like to enhance that coverage on all shifts. So we're going to try to make some initiatives in that area, and we'll be reporting back to you in the next couple of weeks as we get closer to the deadline for the budget. But I'm hopeful that we'll be able to make some more improvements within our budget constraints. The other thing that we're really trying to be careful of is, information technology, IT, hardening our systems. It's just everywhere you turn, there's attempts at cyber crime. I was the target last week. Yesterday, yeah, this week, yeah. Someone sent in an invoice for $49,000 for some VIP consulting service that I had presumably ordered, and it was, you know, they had an email chain. It was so convincing, could have easily been paid. And Kevin came in and said, "Dan, what are you doing? Where are you going? What's this thing you signed up for?" And you know, it was the whole thing was fake. So we have reported it to the police, but we're trying to be as cautious as we can. So certainly worthwhile to put some money to the extent that we can into hardening the cybersecurity, and of course that's consistent with trying to keep our bond rating looking good. That's one of the things that they look at is cybersecurity. So we're trying to do the right things. And then finally, our little caper with the sailboat. I don't know if everyone's aware of it. Denise, I think you are, because you couldn't help but see it. A fellow the other night decided he was in Stonington Harbor, and it was gale force winds blowing, and decides at 8 o'clock at night that's a good time to try to make the push to make it to Florida, start heading down south, and had very little or no experience sailing, and got into trouble off of Black Point, and our fire service rescued him along with the Coast Guard. I was very, very concerned that these guys were going out at 2 in the morning. I was troubled by that, but they wanted to save this guy, and they did, him and his 2 cats. But we ended up with a floundering sailboat off of Giant's Neck, between Giant's Neck and Black Point. But we were able to mobilize a contractor, T.J. Londrigan. He came over and he had the wherewithal to get the boat up, get it out. Now it's on dry land in his marina. He had to be there at 3 in the morning to pump it out to catch there was a perigee tide, which, every 6 months you get these extreme high tides. It was that moment that he had to get it out. He did. So we avoided that, but, there's all these unanticipated expenses that we face. But we got the job done, and without any damage to spilt oil or anything else that might have occurred. So that's my report for tonight. If there's any questions about any of that. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly no objections to anything that you're suggesting. Just a question. Where I work, we are using a lot of Gen AI to do a lot of things that humans used to do in terms of making assessments, so that we refine our processes a bit better. Is there any role at all, in your opinion, for using Gen AI to sort of assess how we expand the fire service, or based on recent rainfall, for example, or what types of cybersecurity changes need to be made? Can that be woven in and to make the decisions better?
Well, I'll comment on that a little bit. I'm not sure that it's advanced enough for maybe a smaller municipality like us to really be able to use AI technology. However, I did have an extensive meeting today with the chairman of the Water and Sewer Commission, and with the state of Connecticut DEEP, concerned about the use of one of the wells that's near Bride Lake and Bride Brook. And if we use too much water from the well, it draws down the water. And one of the conversations we had was, to try to manage that situation so we still can use the well, but at the same time not harm the passage of the fish when they spawn. They want to get back out to the ocean. And there is a study using AI to help determine what the optimal level that has to be in the river, and what the activity of the little fish that are trying to get down. So that was the first time we really talked about using AI in a practical way to alleviate one of the problems that the town is facing, the water supply. So we're cognizant of it. There may be opportunities where in the future where it does weigh in and help us to solve some of our problems. So that's one that I can point to, but haven't really thought about it as far as the fire service. Maybe there is.
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole. I'm happy to talk with you about it more offline.
Oh, great, good, yep. But certainly an evolving technology and something we have to think about.
Dan, I just had a couple of things. So
Yes.
I know I sort of mentioned it to you over the holidays. With all of these unanticipated expenses, are we doing anything concrete, like a hiring freeze, to try to mitigate some of these extra?
So, the word is out that, look, we have to make do as much as possible with the people we have, or, replacing people, but not expanding departments. The exception would be, as we just talked about, the fire service. That's going to require new hires to get to if we're able to do it, to get to a level that, that really keeps the town bolstered and safe in that area. But absent that, the word is out that we are trying to not hire anyone unless it's absolutely necessary. So that idea is being put forth as we have the budget discussions.
And then just, I guess, from a bigger picture, we've heard that the opportunity for additional growth is being hampered by the lack of sewer capacity. And, obviously with all of, union contracts, no matter what we do to try to save money, every year our personnel expense goes up.
Right.
Our pension contributions go up.
Mhm.
I think we're up 10 bodies from last year's pension to this year's pension in terms of, numbers covered under it. And the only way to really, help us keep from raising taxes is to grow the grand list.
Yep.
And, we don't want to change the nature of Niantic, but there's got to
Understood.
be some way that we can continue to grow without, and do it in a balanced way. Is there any plans with water and sewer to try to increase that capacity?
So, they're both related. The more you increase your sewer, that's because you have more water to put down into the sewer, right? So you need to be able to expand your water capacity first. And then if you're able to develop the water capacity, then of course you need to expand your sewers. And that was really, part of the large discussion today that I had with DEEP about allowing us to, be as efficient as possible using our wells to maintain an adequate supply of water for the town, because that's the initial constraint. And then, of course, the sewer capacity, there's capacity there, but it's earmarked, it's encumbered by developers that have a right, have already secured their right to that capacity. So to the extent that there is some change in that demand or capacity that is being reserved that can't be used, we're always looking at that issue. And I've had conversations with New London, and we're speaking with Waterford. I've really developed a pretty good relationship with New London, with their chairperson of their water system. And I think they see me as credible and someone that they can really have a conversation with. So I am hopeful down the road we may be able to secure more capacity, but I don't want to count on it until we get a little bit further along in talks and negotiations and see just what they're able to do. But we're certainly very aware of that on the Water and Sewer Commission, and it's understood that growth for development is limited by sewer capacity. So we understand that dynamic, and we're exploring it.
Thank you.
Of course.
Anyone have any other?
Just questions that I'm assuming the guy's going to reimburse us for the boat, or
It doesn't look like he has the ability to reimburse us, but we're trying to see if we can see what we can work out as far as
We had the same
getting it paid
problem.
for without us taking
we
the
had
total
a
hit.
few years ago we had the same problem with a beach boat up on.
Yeah.
I don't know if we ever got reimbursed for that one at all.
I don't know. This guy is penniless, I think, and ill, and I
He's
don't
gonna
think
get
he's.
to Florida. Just
Pardon me?
that's how he's going to make it to Florida.
You don't leave at 8 o'clock in a gale wind and
Yeah.
without any experience. Unfortunately, I feel sorry for the
Or you
fellow.
leave in September.
Yeah, it's one thing. But anyhow, we'll we have a bill. We're going to have to pay it, and then there might be some other source of paying for it. But I don't want to say more than I should at the moment on that.
Thank you.
Of course.
Next under reports is Finance Director, Mr. Gervais.
All right. Let's see what we got here. All right, so just a status update of where we are with all our projects, all our and our budgets, audits, everything else included in between. So we'll discuss later in the night the Capital Improvement Committee. We'll go over some Finance Department projects. The town has started our negotiations with UPSU. It's the only union contract on the town side that's up for negotiation this year. One thing I just want to put on everyone's radar is we have investment advisors for our pension plan, but we do not have we do not have any advisors that oversees our 457 and 401A investments or managed funds, whatever you want to call it. So we're looking to add that to the budget for next year.
Can
We're
you
also
tell me what UPSU, what that is?
say that again.
UPSU union contract, if you could just let me know what the acronym is?
Service employees.
Yeah, so it's the administrative staff in town hall,
Town hall.
highway crew, park and rec crew, and janitorial staff.
Okay,
Pretty much the
Yeah.
biggest.
It's the biggest union in town. It has over 60 employees in it. So it's our biggest union.
so I get acronyms from 3 different organizations I belong to, so I get them all confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, United Public Service Employees Union, I believe it is. I was a guess in the dark. I don't believe that's accurate, but that sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
So, and then we're the town. We're discussing with multiple departments. There's over half a dozen departments that use radios. Most of them are on the same radio system, which is a town-sponsored, a town-owned, managed system. A lot of towns around us are pushing towards the state system. That comes at a cost. So we're still discussing that internally. We're going to go over some budget highlights for 25. We're going to talk about the resolution for the pension tax issue for the 13 firefighters and police officers that are retired that receive pension payments. The East Lyme Brush Fire Service, oh my, we just filed paperwork with the state of Connecticut. Those wildfires, the brush fires in town, cost us $100,000 in overtime. So when we look at the fire service budget, keep in mind, we budgeted for 4 firemen on a shift, right? So when Dan talks about our plan for increasing the fire service, we have 3 fire stations. We have currently 4 firemen on any given shift. So we have 2 in Niantic, at headquarters, 2 in Flanders, and during the day, there's a part-timer that goes to Station 2. The proposal is preliminarily to go to 6. So we have 2, 2, and 2, right? We currently have 11 career firemen. We have 3 shifts of firemen. In order to get to 4 firemen on a shift, you need 12. To get to 6, you need 18. So that's kind of where we're looking to go, or the proposal where we're discussing. We have a conversation tomorrow with the union, the fire union, to see how we can come to an agreement to get us to 15 to 18 firemen, somewhere in that range. We're going to touch on the 2023 audit, and then fund balance projection. I did not get to that today, but I'm putting it on our radar so we can start talking about that again. The fund balance as of 6/30/2023 is $19 million, unaudited, but that's looking like that'll be the number. All right, 25 budget highlights. We have, the fire chief budget is just about 100% expended, because we have 2 individuals coming out of that line.
And the police chief budget,
Correct. What did I say?
fire chief.
Fire's just always on my head these days. But police chief budget, yes, thank you for that, Paul. Dispatch overtime. We are down 2 full-time dispatchers. We've been down 1 pretty much the whole year. We've tried to fill it. We filled it with 3 individuals who have all quit. And now we are down a second dispatcher. So on top of, when a new dispatcher comes on, you can't just throw them into the seat. You have to have them sit with, the 2 dispatchers that are working. Someone's getting overtime, and they're working there to train that person. But these people are leaving before they can even go on their own. So our overtime budget is stretched pretty thin. We're at $125,000 of the, I believe it is $170,000 spent. Mentioned before, the brush fires are depleting our materials line. We spent a lot of money on foam to cover the ground to prevent the roots. The roots catch on fire. It goes underground, and then these fires just pop up all over the place.
It's the new foam, not the old.
Yeah.
No PFAS in the foam, to the best of our knowledge.
You want me to wait for questions at the end or now?
No, fine.
Is it good? Is there any other way to solve the dispatcher problem other than hiring a local?
I did ask what the regional towns around us do. Old Lyme uses Troop F, I believe. and Waterford has their own dispatch center as well, I believe. So one of the issues is we have 8 dispatchers. So even if we are fully staffed, 2 of the shifts are on overtime. So 2 8 or 12-hour shifts, because 8 dispatchers doesn't give you a full 24/7 crew of 2 dispatchers on at a time. There's 2 empty shifts. So every week we're filling 32 hours of overtime at a full schedule. No one takes a sick day. So
Doesn't sound as efficient as you'd want it to be.
maybe some parts, this AI comes in here a little bit. When you go to Burger King, they take your order, but I don't think that'll work the same in a dispatch center. But it's worthy of exploring, see what options are out there. Any other question? Okay. Public Works, we're having a tough time maintaining some of the lower positions within the Public Works Department, like the maintainer ones and the labor, not so much the CDL drivers, but that's also an issue. One thing that kind of creeped up on us this year that no one really anticipated was this public benefit charge. So in conversations today with Joe Bergaw, he's projecting about $75,000 over budget on electric. But we are down a couple guys, so I told him he has to absorb that in his Public Works budget, and it looks like we're going to be able to do that.
And Board of Ed is probably.
Board of Ed's probably much worse, because those buildings are way bigger than our, yeah. I think their electric's probably 3 times as much as ours, so. So if we're 75 over, I imagine they're probably pushing 150, 200. So unless Mariana budgeted for that,
I don't believe she did.
yeah. I mean, that crept up on, even our house bills, you're looking.
Caught everyone by surprise.
Yeah. And then one thing we always discuss here is Park and Rec seasonal help for the grounds crew. We currently have a staff of 4, so it's always an issue of, we budget for them to start around April and go through Labor Day, and then one more tapers off sometime in November. A lot of the times we're keeping them longer because there's still open projects to do, and that exhausts that budget line. In 26, one of the proposals is we have a retirement on the administrative side in Park and Rec. So while we're not adding an employee, we're shuffling one of those full-timers out of the office and pushing them, hiring someone new in the grounds crew. And besides just Park and Rec, the parks, they also maintain all our historical properties. There's maintaining town hall and all of our town facilities. So it's more than just the parks we have in town. On the revenue side, okay, so that was the bad news. There wasn't many highlights on the expenditure side. On the revenue side, we're looking pretty good. Now, just so everyone knows, we have $1 million that we took out of fund balance, right? So what my goal is to bring in more than $1 million so we don't touch our fund balance. We're looking pretty good at the moment if the Fed keeps their interest rate up. Right now, we're at $817,000 of $1.2 million investment earnings. So we're about $125,000 a month. That's going to be more in January, or well, depending on, I guess the interest rate just got pulled back a little. So it's kind of like a shot in the dark with the interest rate fluxing, but we're going to get approximately $35 million in January. We're going to invest the majority of that. So hopefully in the next couple months we'll be able to hit that 1.2 million, probably coming closer to $1.5 million. So that'll be a nice $300,000 savings for our fund balance there. Conveyance taxes, town clerk, couple buildings must have sold in town. We've collected almost 70% already, and really at this point we should be at 50%. A lot of these reports are ran through 12/31, so them being 20% over budget there, that's, if that keeps up, they're going to be $500,000 of a $375,000 budget, $125,000 over there. Building permits. I don't know if Mr. Garside, our building official, has come before the Board of Selectmen yet, but just comparing our building rates to neighboring towns, we are still lower than our neighboring towns. So I think he's going to come before the board. I don't want to speak for him, but in our conversations, he's probably going to come before the board the next month or two to increase our building fees again. Right now,
You say we're lower, not in our.
Not in collections.
But.
In the fee per $1,000 plan, or however it's calculated, the calculation to charge people, we're at the lower end of neighboring towns. So I'm just trying to, be on par with our neighbors and make sure we're collecting, what we need to collect. That's going to come in probably about 850,000. So that's going to be about $100,000 over. So those three accounts, just those three accounts together, about $500,000 of savings of our fund balance. Couple more good pieces of news here. Tipping fees. So Joe Bergaw explained this to me a couple days ago. What's happening is we charge, so we're a member of SCARA, which is the Southern Connecticut Regional Resource Authority. I missed an R there, but so we're a member that we have a big healthy fund balance. It's about, I think, $30 million of fund balance in this not-for-profit that we send our trash to and deal with. Neighboring towns such as Old Lyme are not members of SCARA. They're part of the Essex regional area. And this has to do with the price you pay per ton of garbage when you bring it to either the dump, to the incinerators or wherever you drop the trash off to. We charge an administrative fee on top of it's just a couple dollars per ton, but when you're dealing with thousands of tons, it adds up. So what's happening is SCARA has such a better rate for trash. In his opinion, people are claiming that their trash belongs to East Lyme because it's cheaper than neighboring towns, but we're getting a kickback. We get this, not a kickback, but we get a little administrative charge on top of it. So that's why we budgeted for $233,000, and we're already at $180,000. So we're going to project probably about $360,000, another $100,000 over collected. I don't say over budget, over collected on that line. Does that make sense? So whereas like Old Lyme might charge $110 a ton to remove the trash, we charge them $72, $75, something like that. And those numbers are exact. I think it's like $110, $112, but we're charging much less. So it behooves these contractors, CWPM or whoever they are, to say, oh, that trash came from East Lyme because they get this better rate too. And we just get a little, we get our administrative fee on top of it. So they're charging a cheaper rate, but our trash is significantly up, right? Did that make sense, everybody? All right. Another one here, private duty administrative charges. We've collected so far $104,000. Our budget was $100,000. The plan is to remit. Now we hit that $100,000 cap. Every month at month end, we're going to remit whatever is over in that account into our pension. Right? When you look at the bottom there, our expected ADAC payment, which is the actually determined employer contribution that we as a town have to make to our pension plan, is going to be approximately $1.2 million. So if we could put more money into the pension plan, it probably won't offset the next one because we haven't put that money in yet, really, for them to do the calculation. But the following year, we would probably have a reduced increase to our ADAC payment. I don't want to say reduced ADAC payment, probably just a reduced increase to the
And
payment.
as we're putting it in on a monthly basis, it's then getting invested.
Correct.
And hopefully growing in there as opposed to at the end of the year where it'd been just in the general fund.
Correct. Yep. Yeah, and so right now we're collecting about 4.25% on our funds at the various financial institutions. STIF, I think, is at 4.4 right now, but the pension discount rate is 6.5. So it behooves us to put it in the pension because we're getting expected higher return out of our pension than what we can invest in short-term investments. All right, so that's what I had for fiscal 25. I just want to turn everyone's attention to this there's two long papers. One that's a single sheet. It's portrait. This is our ARPA. These are our ARPA accounts. So, long story short, I've got to talk to these various departments, but the idea was departments had to spend or encumber the funds. And when I say encumber the funds, an actual obligation to start work, do work, not just have a purchase order out there in the world. The work had to be started by the end date was 12/31/24, so 2 weeks, 2 weeks ago roughly. If we haven't started, so you see some of these projects that have money left over, that life available column, about $400,000. I've talked to our external accountant. we are going to move that into the general fund, and that is going to be considered lost revenue, right? That is one of the acceptable uses of the ARPA funds. At this point, we've run out of time to spend the money in ARPA. These people had their time to spend the projects. Now we're obligated to either return the money to the federal government or use it as lost revenue in the general fund. So that's the plan for the $400,000.
That sounds
And
good.
and you're asking yourself, 5.1 million plus 400,000 does not equal 5.7 million. You're onto something. There's another column here of encumbrances, which are those purchase orders that are outstanding. It just made this paper way too small for everyone to read. So that's why the numbers don't reconcile at the bottom there. So when we meet next month, I can provide this handout again. Those numbers will all be zeroed out. There'll be a thing at the bottom called lost revenue, and we'd be moving that over to the general fund as lost revenue. So between the 500,000 and those over collected revenue accounts plus this 400,000, we might be able to save that use of fund balance. So that $1 million. So that would be great. All right, I have another report here for the grant fund. And the reason I'm just, I don't have a copy in front of me. Dan, do you have a copy? Right here. So this is out of our accounting system. And what we're trying to do, does everyone have a copy of this? Looks very, not the nicest form in the world. It's very hard to read, even for us in the finance office. That's why we dump it into Excel. So what we're doing is working with our software company to make these forms more readable. So we're able to print them out of the software. Scott, if you don't have one over there, I could always give you one.
I'll locate it, don't worry.
Okay. It's kind of hard to read unless you know what the project code is. Everything from the revenue side says state grants operating, and everything down below says program expenses. So we'll provide a nice clean report, just like this ARPA fund. We had to do a little manual manipulation on to get us there. So before we had this report, a lot of these grants were either in the general fund or they were in the bonded capital projects funds. And having a grant fund kind of does do a nice job of keeping track of all the funds. We can see just last week we approved the $75,000 nuclear safety grant. It's on the front page. That's a negative $75,000. Some other things on here you can see, the NIPS money that we get for bottle deposits, those little alcoholic NIPS. We get about $26,000 a year from those NIPS. The hundreds of thousands of them are sold in East Lyme every year. It's kind of crazy, but we're happy for the revenue. So, and then also we charge fuel through the grant fund now as well. So if you flip to the second page, you'll see year to date we spent $234,000 on fuel. We have encumbrances outstanding of $214,000.
Should we be concerned if we're 119% utilized in
For
a
which one?
grant? On the front page, it just says other grants operating.
So the front page is revenue. You could tell. So, yeah, no, that's actually a good thing. That means we've over collected. So how the system works is we have to put a budget in. So while we have a revenue budget, we also have an expenditure budget. So let me just try to find the 33,000 on the backside. I don't see it. Usually you have to put a revenue budget in and an expenditure budget in, right? But these funds, like, people are either donating money to us, or we get grants, and you're not updating the budget amount every day. It's usually updated quarterly or whenever someone's looking to spend money. So that's usually the case there. We probably received, let's see here. Yeah, so we projected, we just did a budget of 33,000 for the year. So far, there's 39,000 there. So we received 6,000 more than we were expecting of NIPS money. We are, Public Works is talking with the finance department about spending that money on either street sweeper parts. It's restricted funds. There's only certain things we can spend it on. So we're putting together a plan with the budget to try to say, okay, well, can we move some of the sweeper parts into that fund, or what can we use that funding for? Similar with the opioid settlement money. We've got over $100,000 in opioid settlement money. So what we're looking to do is, we just had a conversation yesterday with Sarah Furman, the Youth Family Services Director. about moving some of the program expenses. What can we use some of the grants for, to try to offset some of the increases to the operating budget. Let's see here. All right. Next up is our financial statement audits. We are currently on the 2023 financial statement audit. We are hoping to have this done by next page is our timeline we had. We were trying to get it out by February 15th. It's looking more realistically to be the beginning of March. So while we're a little behind schedule here, we're hopeful to get that out by March and then immediately start our 2024 audit. After our 2024 audit, we're going to have to go out to bid for our audit services. I did get a quote from our current auditors just to lock something, just to have a number in our budget. $100,000 is the going rate now for an audit.
It was like 60.
Oh, we were at 85. We were 85, so, and that was
Year.
last year, so. We have a new audit partner. I think I said that. Nicoletta retired. Now it's Jessica Aniskoff. We met with her today to go over some open items on our audit, clear that up, get that out the door here, and move on to 24. Ideally, we're trying to get 24 out as well on a tight turnaround. Hopefully, we get that out by 6:30. So we'd have about 2.5, 3 months to work on that, but we really need that done before we go out to bond in August. So we're gonna get these out the door here. Capital Improvement Committee, I think it's on our agenda to talk about later, but I just want to touch upon, there's the fire, boys. We met with Public Works, Park and Rec, Police, Dispatch, Fire, and Emergency Management. We've toured the Field Service Building down on Colton Road, or Capitol Drive? Capitol Drive. And we've toured all the parks facilities, and had, productive conversations with all these departments. Our next meeting, if anyone's curious to join, and the public as well, January 21st, we're going to be touring the Senior Center, and then afterwards we will be hosting the CIP meeting at the conclusion of the tour. So I remember now. There's another legal-sized paper that I printed so everyone just has a copy of it, so you're not blindsided in the budget season. This is the current proposed capital project list for 2026. So, the Capital Improvement Committee and Dan and the rest of us have not had a chance to, look at these and cut them back. I mean, we're looking at them and reviewing them, but the CIP committee hasn't met yet to propose or recommend changes to this yet. So right now, our total CIP ask is $26,569,500. Of the $26.5 million, $17 million is one project for the renovation expansion of the senior center, of the community center. So on the right side of this paper is how we fund this. So there's 20-year bond, 10-year bond, 5-year paid in cash. So if you go right to the last page here, you can see at the very bottom we do a little reconciliation. 2.9 million of this is proposed to be paid in cash. Well, this past budget year we funded $900,000 out of the general fund with cash, right? So if we were going to do 2.9 million, that would be an increase of about $2 million in cash capital requirements, which is 3/4 of a mil, not a mil like the mill rate, right? In itself. So if you look down, there's a little breakdown of the cash capital. $447,000 would be LoCIP funds, so that's state money. $160,000 will be private duty billings because they pay for their own police cars. And then the town operating is really $2.3 million, which is still nearly a 3x from the $900,000 we are currently paying for cash capital. But the reason I bring this up is a lot of towns that we try to model ourselves after, or at least I do, like Madison. Madison spends $5.5 million a year in cash capital and has minimal debt service. We have a substantial debt service and minimal cash capital. So we kind of have to flip those, but we're going to have a few painful years as we increase cash capital and we're trying to pay down this debt service, right? Just so everyone also knows, we have $19 million in bond anticipation notes outstanding before we add a dollar to this. Okay, $19 million. We had a call today with our bond counsel to take out $500,000. In the March meetings, we're going to be asking for $500,000 to renovate the town hall. The town is under a DOJ, it's not indictment, what's the word I want to use? Order?
Mandate.
A consent order. We had an individual that went to the Department of Justice and said this building isn't ADA compliant. They found us not to be in compliance. They gave us until October 2025 to renovate this building into ADA compliance. So if you've been around Town Hall, you'll notice most of the offices now have a reduced height counter somewhere in their office. Like if you go to the tax collector's office, to the left is a reduced counter. That's ADA compliant. Town clerk, I believe, is now ADA compliant.
The water coolers?
The water coolers had to be dropped down. Our bathrooms have to be renovated. We have to put in an elevator / lift to get people downstairs because the back ramp is not ADA compliant, because if you just lose track of your wheelchair, you're just hitting a brick wall. And then the front of the building has to be reworked to get the ramp. That ramp is not in compliance either. So it's going to be about a $500,000 ask. With the tight deadline of October 1st, if we put it in the budget for July, that doesn't give enough time really to go out to bid, spec it out, and get construction done and completed for that October deadline. So we originally, last year, had LoSiP funds set aside. There was $275,000 set aside last year in LoSiP funds. That's going to be about half the project, and there's a litany of requirements now with LoSiP funds. It's just more heightened scrutiny, and it wouldn't only do half the project. So.
And they're pretty serious about it, so, we're dealing with the Justice Department. CEO doesn't want to end up in Leavenworth, so I hope we get this done.
So we don't.
Sorry to interrupt. If we don't, is there some legal risk?
Yeah.
Can you be more detailed?
I'm not conversant on it. I think Joe Bergaw has been having the negotiations with the Justice Department. Now, this has been ongoing for some time, but I'm cognizant of the deadline, and you don't want to be outside the agreement when you're dealing with the Justice Department. And so we've made representations. The feeling I'm getting is, if we've got the work in progress and we've got the purchase orders and the contracts and we're almost there, that they, will be showing sufficient good faith that it won't be a big problem. But I certainly wouldn't want to be in the position.
It's the right thing to do.
What's that?
It's the right thing to do.
It's the right thing to do. We've been ordered to do it, and there's someone to reckon with. So we want to get it done.
So if anyone has any questions about this, you can email me, come to my office, see me after, we can discuss it, because I pretty much know every project down here inside and out. And so does Denise, the chairman of CIP. So there's the timeline we discussed. So it's moving down a month, so that still puts us on time for the 24 audit to be 6/15. That leaves a couple weeks. Did this go backwards? All right, so tasks to complete still that are relevant to the finance board. The Coastal Resiliency Fund, while it was funded last year, we still have to draft an ordinance and put that out to the Board of Selectmen to get that ordinance finalized, and also collaborate on what this, what's the scope of the Coastal Resiliency Fund, what kind of does it entail? And then the other one is the OPEB trust. So these are both items that were identified on our S&P rating agency call. They noted we were a shoreline community. A month after that call, the seawall at McCook's fell down, so it really validated their fears of us being a shoreline coastal community. OPEB trust was a big one, and there was a third one they were looking at.
The cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. So we just met 2 hours ago with our IT department to go over their budget for next year. It does have a significant increase. We're switching vendors for some of the cyber protections, increasing training for the employees. There's quite a few things in their budget.
Operating systems that have to be updated.
Yeah. So we are moving, one of the CIP goals we had was identifying capital versus operating. And in doing that, we are going to move some of these to the operating budget, such as a computer replacement. We're just going to put it in the general fund. Because at this point, computers they're not capital. Everyone's got a computer. They're a couple $100. I mean, even the most robust ones are, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 for town use. I know computers can get crazy expensive, but, we're just running Excel formulas here for the most part.
Just back to the OPEB trust.
Yep.
I think we're also going to, I guess, formally determine, is this going to be something that the pension board has in its responsibility? I know, we've spoken with fiducian, but if so, then I think we need to update the ordinance that established the pension board as to its scope of responsibilities.
Yep. That's a good one. And also probably, if we're updating the pension board ordinance, we might want to include the advisor for the 401 and 457, make it the board's decision. Because if not the board, is it Dan's decision, or I'm not sure who that would fall on, So-
I think since the pension board was responsible for choosing the financial advisor for the pension, it kind of makes sense to. It's a similar.
All right. I like that one. All right, I think that was all I had.
You've been busy.
Oh, you know what, the one thing that's not in here, I don't know if it's an item on the agenda. Oh, yeah, it is. I was gonna talk about the tax issue, but we can talk about that later.
Okay, so on to new business. Discussion and possible action fiscal year 25 budget transfers. So, make a motion.
Move to, a motion to ratify departmental transfers in the amount of $23,103.52 processed for fiscal year end June 30th, 2025.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. I don't know, Kevin, did you want to touch base on, we have a document along with this?
Yeah, so, these are all, most of these are run-of-the-mill. A lot of these, the first three, you'll notice they all have to do with phones. So we've centralized our phone bills, so now they're all under IT. So when we look at IT's budget, just to let everyone know, when IT's budget gets put to everybody, it might be a 35% increase, but that's because a lot of these other departments have been turning over all their software, phone, and internet expenses. We're consolidating them all onto one bill usually, and we're giving them to IT to manage, right? So you'll notice the first three lines, Youth Family Services, Park and Rec, and Registrars, are taking money out of their licensed hosting lines where they pay their phones, and they're giving it over to IT.
So, I like the idea of centralizing it, but are we losing any oversight ability? Like, is IT know
So-
exactly what's going on in those other departments and would be able to flag someone handing in a invoice that?
Well, so a lot of these, so when we're talking about phones, this is either Frontier or what's the other one? AT&T we use. So we already have centralized access to those. So not everyone has access. So like a department head couldn't call up and get another cell phone. They'd either have to call the EOC, because Julie Wilson kind of spearheads the phones, or the IT department. So it already is kind of centralized, just the billing wasn't, right? So we'd get an invoice for, say, $10,000, and you'd have 3 purchase orders for the same invoice because, $150 is paid for by the emergency management, $250 is paid for by Park and Rec, and then hopefully everyone pays their invoice at the same time so the poor Frontier or the vendor can match it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now it's just consolidating the billing portion of it. The control portion of it was already kind of being managed. Does that kind of answer the
Yeah,
question there?
that's what I was just concerned with.
And then the
It makes good sense to have it in one spot.
And then the other expense, the bottom one there, is just shuffling expenses out of the election day line. Out of the referendum line into the election line. So with the, what was it called, early voting, that crushed the budget. So we moved pretty much everything except for about $9,000 to run this spring's referendum for our budget. So we have one shot.
Anyone else have any questions on this? No, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? No. Motion carries 4-0-0. Next on the agenda is a communication from the assessor's office with the motor vehicle supplemental tax.
Yeah, so I just spoke with Diane a few minutes ago here. Page 1 just kind of breaks down, it's assessor jargon really, but she wanted me to give it to you guys. Page 2 is the meat and potatoes of why we're here. Top right corner, tax amounts. $684,910.18 we are expecting to collect from motor vehicle supplemental. So just to let everyone know, people at home, if you're curious what a motor vehicle supplemental is, the grand list comes out October 1st. If you buy your car between October 1st and January 1st, I think it is. I'm not exactly sure the dates, but there's this period of time. If you buy your car, you're going to not get it. You don't get a tax bill. Well, then following year, you're going to get 2 tax bills because you pay taxes on those cars. So regardless if you just kind of timed at the right timing. So $684,000, I think she said. So there was 2,700 people or 2,700 vehicles were bought that, deal with this timing issue here. So we budgeted $550,000 to collect. The total amount to collect is $685,000 roughly. Motor vehicle supplemental usually has a lower collection rate than the actual, real estate taxes, where we can just, pay your tax up to a certain period of time. We're going to put the house up for auction. You can't really deal with vehicles. People move. The car's gone. The car's in California. The car got crashed. They crashed the car and left it to get repoed. That's a harder number to collect. So 550 is probably realistic there. So.
Okay, thank you for that. Next on the agenda was a review of town vehicles and equipment. This was something that I had asked for as we started going through the CIP process. You really get an understanding of how many vehicles and everything else there is out there, and I just thought it would be a good information for the Board of Finance to have. Unfortunately, we were not able to get the report that we were hoping for from our insurance yet, so we'd like to table this, and hopefully if we get it, we can go
February.
through it in February.
Yeah, I have the PDFs. They're just not that readable, and I can't kind of translate them to Excel that easy, and they're hundreds of pages. So I requested for it to be in Excel, so hopefully I can get that for our February meeting.
Thank you. Next, just the CIP Working Group Committee is sort of a subcommittee of Board of Finance, 2 members, the Board of Selectmen, and 2 members of the Board of, I'm saying this wrong, 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 2 members of the Board of Finance, and 1 member of the public. So this was established back in September with the idea that rather than at the very end of the budget process when everyone's exhausted going through so many numbers and then looking at the CIP, really taking the time at the beginning of the budget process as all of the department heads are putting together their budgets and their wish list. So I think it's a great committee, and really appreciated all the department heads that we've worked with so far. And then one of the things that we've tried to do is come up with a rubric to look at everybody's asks and then sort of rate them as to about 10 different measures as to how efficient, how effective, where is the money supposedly coming from if it were to be approved, what's the remaining useful life of the asset they're looking to replace, are there any alternatives, and is the project actually shovel ready, so to speak. So I think it's been a really good process. Like Kevin said earlier, we looked at the CIP and said, geez, should this item really be in CIP or should it be in operating? So kind of coming up with some parameters as to, let's move something out of CIP or into CIP. Is it the right place for it? And also putting the right timelines. I think one of the biggest example of is a shovel ready is if we were to replace the wall, the seawall at McCook's. So you could say, yes, let's do that and put it in this year's CIP, but realistically it could take a year or more to get all of the permitting done from DEP and what have you. So maybe in the CIP this year, an estimate of what it would cost to go through that process. But then in the out years of 2, 3, 4, maybe that's where the bulk of that goes when we have more information. So it's just, I think it's been a great process so far, and it really gives the department heads a chance to really talk about why they need something. And I also sort of listen to 2 or 3 different department heads all talking about a need for something, and having them present together makes it a more holistic. These departments need to work together because they are all looking for sort of the same thing. So it's like I said, I think it's been a really good process to date, and look forward to the next couple of meetings, and then the CIP will propose which projects they think should go forward.
If I may just,
Yeah.
I've sat through a number of budgets now on the Board of Selectmen, and it's always been, at the tail end, everybody's tired, they've been weeks going over the budget, then, oh yeah, the capital improvement plan, and you race through it, it's not real oftentimes, and that was something that was lacking. And I think the idea to have this committee and really take the time to study it, so when these numbers are real, it's a lot closer to reality than it's ever been in the past. So, and that can only help us strategically. So, a great idea, and it's really, I've been enjoying the process, watching it.
And ideally, it's not just, okay, this is how much we're going to spend, but maybe as we look at our debt and reducing the debt, it's how much can the town afford to spend?
Right.
And kind of start with that number and back off into, okay, this is what we have to work with.
Yeah, and it's consistent, I mean, with, we've had several initiatives now. I mean, the idea, and Kevin really pushed for it, is moving towards using cash capital. And we've already, look how much we've improved it from where we started. And now this capital improvement committee. So I think we're doing a lot of good things and making some really significant improvements. So I'm very encouraged. I'm happy to see what we're doing.
Anyone have any questions on the?
No.
Then old business, the pension plan. Kevin, do you want to talk about?
So, 1 second here. We have, I did not print out the updated pension restatement, but I emailed it to everybody. It's on our town website now. So we updated it. I
but
think
it needed
last
to
time was
be-
2000.
I-
It's been 24 years, if even then. 98 maybe.
yeah,
It's been a while. So
Last century.
we brought it up to speed. We've discussed this with our pension attorneys at Robinson and Cole. So it's up to date. It has most of the newest information, best practices in it. We've switched our withholdings for the pension to be more in line with post 1985 or 1986 tax issues, with the pre-tax versus post-tax, which is the second bullet point here, the update on the tax issue. But before we get to that, just so everyone has a copy, I got this today and want you to have it. It's on our website as well, but we don't really ever share this with the Board of Finance. So every month, we get this flash report, which goes through the performance of our pension plan. And if you want a good breakdown of this, our next pension meeting is February 13th, I believe, at 3 o'clock. Our investment advisors, Chris Rollins and Matt Frattini, spend 30 minutes breaking down the performance of our pension plan. But realistically, what you need to know, 1 year, our portfolio outperformed our discount rate. Our discount rate was 6.5%. We performed 8.9%. So
So that's
we
a good
beat our
thing.
rate. Yeah, better than 6.5. So our gain for the year was $2.6 million. So all in all, we ended the year $32.5 million in our pension. Now to touch on, we ready for the second bullet point there?
Well, I think the other important thing to know is that our net contribution, so more is going out than is coming in.
$700,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
so we need to at least get over that negative net contribution
Yeah.
to stay ahead of the game.
Scott, did you have a question?
Yeah, so what do the advisors or you attribute to the really good performance?
So real quickly, if we flip to, I just had that page. If we go to page page 7, really breaks it down. Let's see where the investments come into play here. Well-
Is it just because this was an exceptional year for stocks?
Well,
I
that
think
and
it's a combination of our portfolio mix, and then within the portfolio mix, a number of managers that outperformed the indices that they were being compared to.
So on page 8, you can see all our managed funds we are in. That breaks down all the funds the town's in, our target allocations. So this fund, so I guess it starts off 40% of our fund, or the pension fund, is in fixed income. So that's pretty stable for the most part. There's not much flexibility there. 20% of it, 25 I believe it is, right? 25 is in domestic. 34% is in domestic. 27% of it is in the S&P 500, I believe. That's that Vanguard Institutional Index. Correct me if I'm wrong, Denise. Isn't it an S&P? S&P 500. So S&P had a great year. I think S&P was up 22%. So that was driving the bus there for that one. But if you're curious on how each portfolio manager did, there is a breakdown where they weight everyone against the benchmark. Page 9, we can see what funds the year, 1 year here. We can see that if you flip to page 10, domestic equities, it looks like it made up, it was up 20.9%, right? The benchmark was 22, so we lagged the benchmark a little bit there. But, so if you look, so see, does everyone see where it says Vanguard Institutional Index Fund right there.
Yes.
And then below it, you see it says S&P 500. Then you see IM. So the S&P 500, that's what that got as a return. So for the 1 year, we matched the S&P 500. Vanguard does a good job matching it. Below that was the median of all large cap equity managed funds. So we beat that one. The bottom one is the ranking. I think that's Fiducian's proprietary ranking system of how this ranked, in their opinion, against other funds in that sector. So you can see we're at 20. For the year, it's at 27, which is good because the lower you go, the better it is. If you flip to page,
I'd encourage you, if you wanted to come to the next pension board meeting, it's really,
they do such a better job explaining than I do. Like they break this every page they go through, and I've learned so much in that meeting with all these funds and how the different allocations in international, and every quarter they make recommendations. If there's recommendations to make, put this put this manager on the watch list. Let's move the funds out of this one into a more conservative or aggressive. So I'm pleased with their investment advisors. I think they do a great job.
the other thing is too, the portfolio mix. On the one hand, we see how over the next couple of years, our contribution is going to have to increase more. So there's that, we need to take more risk and put more into equity. But then we kind of balance that where, you don't want to take too much risk because we had a 10-year period where equities didn't return anything at all. So that can really sink a plan. So we were actually kind of lucky that rates had gone higher because we were able to get more out of our fixed income side of the portfolio. And so that's been a way that allows us to take less risk. And then we ended up with a really good year on the equity side. So it's trying to balance a bunch of different factors like that.
So page 2 breaks down all the different asset classes and their performance. So you could see like U.S. equities 4.9, but the large driver of everything was the U.S. large cap. S&P 500 drove everything. I mean, small cap did its own, but it was really the S&P 500 that picked us up. And there's a blend. The benchmark, we judge the performance of our investment advisors on page 7. The historical performance, it breaks it down by the year since inception, but over to the right in the middle it says current benchmark composition. That's what they use. Like what are they benchmarking against? 1% is the 10-year, the 90-day U.S. Treasury, 35% is the U.S. Bloomberg bond aggregate, 2.5% in high yield bonds, 27% in the S&P 500, 6.5% in the Russell, and so forth. So that's how they're getting that benchmark, and we're always trying to beat the benchmark. So on the year, we didn't really beat the benchmark, but we've been beating the benchmark pretty much the whole time. So,
Thank you.
yeah. And if anyone at home's curious, these are all on our website under boards and commissions, pension board, materials. So we upload the flash reports we're sharing here monthly, and then quarterly as well. We put those on the website.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, there was a request for executive session just to discuss police legal fees.
Do we want to touch on the taxation issue real quick?
Oh, you're right.
So,
I thought you had kind of covered that, but.
yeah, but just to kind of resolve it,
Yeah.
because I think we left last meeting at kind of what needs to happen here.
Right.
So we've met with our tax attorney and our pension attorney and our actuary, and best course of action based on the multiple vendors that have oversaw the pension plan between U.S. Bank, Mass Mutual, Empower, and the Hartford over the last couple of years would be to the best course of action for us is to start the non-taxable portion of these 13 individuals we've identified that are in the pension plan start their non-taxation calculator as of 1/1/24. So we were able to get their retiree payouts for calendar year 24 fixed. So the taxable versus non-taxable portion is appropriately broken out, but we're not going backwards more than that. The initial plan was to go back to 2021, get that reissued, get 2022 reissued, reissue 2023, and then, issue a correct 2024 1099-R. So 2024 is going to be fine. We were able to catch U.S. Bank before they processed it, so that's going to be fine, and we're not going backwards. So these 13 individuals aren't going to have to file their tax returns going backwards, retroactively. They're not going to have to amend them. And more importantly, the other aspect of this that was, a concern for the retirees was the number of months that the non-taxable portion was amortized. So there were some individuals that had the amortization of the non-taxable amount was 360 months, which is 30 years. So some of these individuals are 65 years old, 70 years old. I'm not going to live another 30 years. So in talking with the actuary and our pension attorney, we were able to get that amount adjusted based on the 1983 mortality table. So the number of years is significantly reduced. So I think the pension retirees, I think this is the best course of action for everybody. They're happy. They're not going to have to redo their taxes for 3 years. They're going to be made whole going forward on a forward-looking basis, not retroactively. So I think it was a win for all parties, this resolution. So.
Yeah, thank you for all your work on that.
Oh, man.
Definitely,
I was at that meeting, and I really want to thank Kevin he made the push on that, coming up with a new idea on how to do it without having to go back and redo the tax returns. Would have been messy and expensive, and I think it really satisfied everybody's concern, so. You had one of those eureka moments, Kevin.
Yeah,
You really
I'm
did.
glad they just bought it.
Well, it worked, so.
Because they wanted the initial plan was to restate those years.
Oh, my God.
And we just, U.S. Empower won't talk to you, Mass Mutual won't talk to you because they sold the plan off. Right? But they own those years. Good luck finding somebody in the back office. They told me they'll call me in 15 business days. Well, that was 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. I still haven't gotten a phone call, so luckily we won't have to hold our breath with that
So,
one.
good solution.
All right, so, on to executive session, police, legal fees review. Shall we close the door and can we,
Okay, make a motion to come out of executive session with no action taken at 6:55.
Second.
motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? No, motion carries. Next on the agenda is public discussion. Again, we have no public here. Then on to board comments. Do any of my fellow
Just
board
one
members?
request for, if we could get, when you close the 6 months at December 31, if we can get the budget report put in the materials for year-to-date
Yep.
and the balance sheet. You guys know how much I love a balance sheet.
Any other comments? No? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone.